world where trends are moving at lightning speed, there is one trend that seems to be sticking, and that is one that is rooted in wealth, class status, and exclusivity. That is the old money and quiet luxury aesthetic. The old money and quiet luxury aesthetic has been absolutely everywhere. It has taken over social media, fast fashion brands, the runways. But why is this happening? And what does this say about our current political and cultural climate? So let's have a look at the rise of the old money aesthetic, because it really does contrast with some of the other trends that we're seeing right now, which is the more flashier aesthetics of Y2K and, the big logos and the big brand names. It's more about subtlety, it's more about basics, it's more about neutrals, things that are kind of tailored, and that kind of, the kind of idea is that it's generally timeless. The old money aesthetic has minimal branding, and this is because people who are part of old wealth, who have generational wealth, they don't need to scream and shout about the fact that they have wealth. And this is something that you see a lot of the time of people who are newly rich, or the nouveau riche as you sometimes hear it. There's this idea that because they're not used to wealth, they therefore flash the fact that they have a lot of money. The whole point of the old money and quiet luxury aesthetic is that it is subtle, and this is a big contrast between the kind of flashy and more logo orientated aesthetics that we do often see, and therefore it is luxury that is quiet, that whispers, and not something that actually just screams, I'm here and here's my Gucci logo and my Louis Vuitton bag. It's not about that at all. You rarely ever see any such logos on people who are old money and have generational wealth. Let's watch this TikTok video from an account called Claviera. As you can see, this account is obviously in favour of the old money aesthetic, but puts a real judgment and disgust even, which is inferred from that emoji that they use, on people who wear things that have more colours, that are baggier, that have logos. And obviously this is not a nice video because it's extremely judgmental, and I think that's something that, if you're trying to go for a so-called classy look, that's not classy to do that. But as you can see with their comparison of the old money styles, it is things that are neutral, that are tailored, that have these particular types of fabrics. I mean, I don't think that video there was too great of an example, to be honest, because crop tops aren't exactly timeless, and again, the point of it is that it's about timeless pieces. There's no flashiness, there's no logos, the pieces are versatile. It's generally inferred that a lot of the pieces are going to be of good quality materials. There's not really going to be any polyester, it's all going to be natural fabrics, wool, linen, silk, leather. I think an example of the absolute epitome of old money and generational wealth would be the royal family, and if you look at a lot of their casual outfits that they wear, it's all very generational wealth, old money style. And so this is really, I think, a good example of what people who see this style are kind of trying to emulate, but also put their own spin on it, I suppose, because it is a bit more with a twist of, sometimes there's the odd crop top there, sometimes it's, these jackets and blazers that are a bit more oversized, and so it's kind of played with a little bit to bring in a bit more personal style. But as you can see here, probably with some pictures that I'll put up of the royal family, it's really just trying to get that look. But there is an exclusivity to it. That's the kind of point of old money, of generational wealth, is that they run in circles, that they all kind of know each other and they keep their circles small, that they have their particular cliques and they kind of stay within those. And so I think that this is kind of seen even in fashion, because a lot of people, they don't know about these particular brands, they don't know about these perhaps particular styles. And so therefore there is this kind of gatekeeping nature to it, of only these certain people really know what is old money, they only really know what is exactly quiet luxury. Looking at this video from Glam Opulence, the idea of the old money aesthetic is something for the elite. It's not for the everyday person. It goes alongside an elite level lifestyle, which is these high-end cars, stately homes, yachts, fancy holidays, skiing trips, fine dining, all the things that really encapsulate this lifestyle. Pop culture has also played into this as well, with shows like Succession and Gossip Girl especially. I remember watching Gossip Girl and seeing Chuck Bass and seeing Blair Waldorf, who are two characters that absolutely emulate this type of aesthetic, and seeing this particular kind of level of, I don't know, like a particular level of aesthetic and a particular level of money and exclusivity and this kind of elite nature of it. I think for me and possibly my generation, seeing Gossip Girl and seeing the way that they dressed was the first time that you really saw this type of quiet luxury move into the spotlight. And sure, this could just be a new fashion choice, or it could be an indicator of something deeper societally. Fashion is a mirror of society, and when times are harder and there are economic downturns, you often see people move towards fashion choices that are more classic, that are more timeless, and styles that exude stability and wealth. And I think in a world of fast fashion, and when times are uncertain economically, for sure, this is 100% happening right now, you do see people reaching towards these types of styles as like an aspirational escape of something that is stable and does show wealth. It certainly adds this kind of level of security in a time of chaos. So I'm just going to read you a quick extract from Marie Claire, which talks about recession indicators in fashion. The real recession indicators in fashion are reflected in trending searches for simple suiting, neutral colours, and conservatively long hemlines, categories that last peaked in the mid-2000s and tend to represent a world-weary, budget-conscious consumer. May de la Puerta, who analyses search behaviour on the account at Data But Make It Fashion, notes that interest in maxi skirts rose by 393% in March. Minimalist and corporate styles increased by 39% and 38% respectively. These items initially reflect a more somber mood, the aesthetic opposite of the 1% loud luxury and sequin bedecked party wear. If you can't buy eggs, you certainly aren't buying logo-coated bags and megawatt watches. Minimalist styles are also inherently practical and can justify their cost per wear in a matter of weeks. If spare change for shopping dries up, they'll still look stylish. If you've heard of capsule wardrobes, you'll often see that a lot of them really just show a lot of these timeless pieces, neutrals, basics, things that are really versatile, and if you put them together can create hundreds upon hundreds of outfits. And so therefore you can really see why people are starting to gravitate more towards this style, because it is more cost effective. This aesthetic isn't just about fashion though. It has undertones that is of a political nature, conservatism, and a return to a time when things were supposedly better. When things are hard and when there are economic downturns, people do tend to romanticize the past and wish to return to an age when things were perceived to be better, when lifestyles were perceived to be more elegant and uplifted. People start to seek refuge in a bygone era and its perceived order. We are seeing this with a lot of influencers as well. I mean, there are outright conservative influencers, for example, like Abby Shapiro, who is Ben Shapiro's brother. She is openly conservative and she has frequently talked about modest fashion. And also, this is very similar to a lot of other trad wives. This is another trend that we have been seeing rise up very quickly, is this kind of wants to return back to the 1950s and a time again when there was this perceived order and this perceived just society that was different and that was better economically and that had better things. And that's just, it's not true. But a lot of people do kind of see it as a time that was better, and it was good in a lot of ways. There is a lot of good things about those eras, but it is no way better than it is now. And so this is why a lot of people are kind of going back to craving the past and craving this era, because they see it as being better than what is happening right now. But anyway, you do see a lot of these kind of traditional influences and trad wives really representing this old money aesthetic, aesthetic and lifestyle and modest fashion. And someone else who I think that really encapsulates this is Nora Smith. And I just want to say she has never said that she is conservative or that she has conservative values. To my knowledge, she has, however, had ties with Ballerina Farm, who again is someone of a more traditional nature. And again, I don't believe that I think Ballerina Farm has ever actually said that she is conservative, but like politically. However, they are both, I believe, Mormons, and so therefore their religion and the religious practices pull them into, I suppose, more of this traditional lifestyle. Nora herself is the same age as me. She is 23 years old. She was married at the age of, I believe, 18 to Lucky Blue Smith, and she now has 3 children. And so this obviously is very much a traditional lifestyle, and also adding to the fact that Lucky Blue Smith is or was himself a Ralph Lauren model, which that brand is 100% as old money aesthetic as you can really get. And the fact that she does wear all these, these outfits and these tailored suits and, all these kind of neutral colours, but very high-end pieces to cook meals from scratch. Again, it very much leans into that traditional conservative by nature trend. Yeah, they are 100% the epitome of this new quiet luxury. Let's have a quick watch of a TikTok from Alicia Behrman, who talks about how fashion is ingrained in our values.
Fashion is political, okay? I actually think the signs of a Trump win have been written on the walls for months. If you think about current trends and what is trending in the mainstream, quiet luxury, trad wife, these like hyper feminine ideals. A lot of it's about conformity. This has been going strong for about 2.5 years now. I exist in a very specific fashion bubble. Everyone around me wears Rick Owens, Andy Muhlmeister. Now, Scout Dixon West also wears Andy Muhlmeister, so I'm not saying that Andy is like an indicator that you're a leftist. But typically, people who are on the left are a little bit more invested in personal style and authentic expression of self. The conformity on this app and in the fashion industry over the last 2 years is extremely indicative of a return to conservatism. And honestly, shame on us for not knowing. Shame on us for not being able to see the signs. I'm not gonna lie, I was surprised because I live in a bubble. But when I was thinking holistically about the industry as a whole, think about Celine. Think about this return to Americana. Ralph Lauren's trending again. People wearing polo bags, little lady jackets. It's so much greater than like red is trending for fall, brown suede is trending for fall. There is a value system associated with that aesthetic. We are returning to that aesthetic because we have returned to that value system.
So yeah, as she said, it is really interesting to hear her say that fashion is ingrained in value systems and that we are as a society kind of moving back towards that value system, and therefore kind of doing your own personal style and going out there with something that is against the grain is a radical act. I mean, it has always been a radical act. If you look at punks and people of that nature, again, it was a radical act to dress that way and to be that way. Grunge as well. It's always been a bit of a fight against what is actually happening in society, politically, and so therefore we might actually end up seeing the complete opposite. Maybe we will see the complete opposite to old money luxury aesthetics very soon. You can really see why social media conservative influencers have really jumped onto this and embraced this new aesthetic and seen it as a return back to a particular value system and fashion as an ideology. Arguably, where looking wealthy and refined is an endorsement of class structure, stability, and tradition. For example, I think a lot of us remember the New York Times magazine, which was taken at the MAGA party, and it was the cover of the magazine called The Cool Kids Table, and it was basically a whole lot of young people wearing this aesthetic, the quiet luxury and old money aesthetic. There was a lot of neutral colours, blacks, whites really, and also wearing tuxes, and so really emulating that particular idea of fashion as an ideology and this symbol of tradition, of class structure, and I suppose going back to this era of perceived stability. All the brands are really catching on to this, but I think an example of how fast that this is reshaping everything is really with Pretty Little Things' complete rebrand. So let's have a look at what it looked like before. So this is what it looked like before. It was pink, it was colourful, it was loud, it was bright, it had unicorns, it had all these things, and it kind of had a bit of a tie to the Kardashians and a lot of the new influencers style that we see right now, compared to how it looks like right now, and it has 100% completely changed. It is now about neutral colours, timelessness, about particular cuts and tailored blazers and all those types of things that it just really didn't have much of before. And you can even see from the actual complete logo rebrand and design that it is, again, more sleek, it is more refined, and it is more of that nature of being old money and quiet luxury. It's no longer got the bright pink and the various colours that it had before. So the reason as to why this is happening is obvious. People aren't interested anymore in the ultra glam and the bodycons. They're interested in the blazers and the loafers and those types of pieces. And so therefore they see that this is where the eyes and the money is going. And so therefore you can 100% see why they decided to do this rebrand. But I think the question arises of whether you can actually truly emulate the old money style on a fast fashion budget, because of the fact that these pieces are meant to be exclusive, because they are made really for people who have that higher budget, who are able to afford these high-end pieces pretty easily. At its core, the rise of the old money aesthetic isn't just about looking rich, it's about wealth and what that wealth represents today in today's society. And so you could arguably say that this fashion trend is not just a fashion trend, and in fact it is a signifier of a much larger cultural shift. Overall, there is absolutely nothing wrong with wearing this particular aesthetic and going towards this style if that's what you want to do. And in fact, there are a lot of things about the quiet luxury and old money aesthetic that are actually quite slept on. For example, the pieces are meant to be timeless and therefore they are more versatile. And so if you just buy one of these pieces, which are usually actually more of natural fabrics, which are going to be better for you and your body, but also if they're tailored, then it's more likely that these pieces are actually going to last a long time. They're going to be more versatile, you're going to reach towards it more, instead of something which is fast fashion, which you don't even wear and throw away, and it ends up in a landfill, unable to decompose because it's made up of like 100% polyester. The idea of timelessness, I think, is actually a little bit more subjective than people actually say, but it is true that a lot of these pieces are of neutral colours, they're basics, and therefore they are always going to be in, and so it's not really jumping onto a trend as such as you might see, for example, the rise in micro trends, which are in one week and out the other. These are a lot of things which are going to be constantly in, like for example, a trench coat is always going to be in, having a black turtleneck is always going to be in, black leather boots are always going to be in. So in fact, investing in some of these pieces is actually probably going to be helpful in a lot of ways because of the fact that they are timeless, I suppose. So I don't think there's anything wrong with wearing this at all. And in reality, it's all about what you actually want to do, but I think that it is so interesting to see actually the political ties and the return to this more conservative style, I suppose, when we are in a economic downturn and also when we are in a political unstable kind of era, like when things aren't doing so well, we tend to go towards more of these recession indicator pieces of fashion, which is just, yeah, I think it's just really interesting. But anyway, let me know your comments and your thoughts down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!